In this video, I'm covering cash flow forecast. Now, there's a lot of videos out there, but it's worth it because it's such an important one. It comes up in so many exams, so many points available for it. But better than that, I reckon everyone should know how to do a cash flow forecast because it's a great way of managing your own personal finances. Now, I'm going to go a bit beyond what others do. I'm going to be giving you a downloadable Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to walk you through so you can play along with it and you can figure out exactly how it works. As ever though, it's going to be based around a silly story that simplifies everything down. Let's dive into it. We're going to base this silly story around a young man called Khalani who's down on his luck and he's in absolute poverty. He's got nothing. He has nowhere to live, no cash, but he is in luck. He receives a phone call somehow, I don't know how, from a lawyer, and the lawyer says, "Good news, you've got a very rich grandma that you didn't know about and she's died," not great news, "but she's left you something in the will." Khalani is so excited, he says, "Come into the office and you're going to find out." So Khalani goes into the office super excited. "Oh, I'm going to get loads of cash. I'm going to have loads of money. This is going to be fantastic." But not quite. The lawyer says that Granny has left Khalani Granny's gym. An asset of Granny's gym. Khalani says, "Okay, yeah, where's all the cash then? Where's all the money? I want the notes. I want the coins." He said, No, there aren't. You're not getting any cash. You are getting the gym. And the gym, great news, it's worth €1,000,000. He goes, "Yeah, but where's the cash? I want cash. I need cash. I want to pay for the shopping, for the food, for the bills." He says, "Well, no, there isn't cash. There is only this gym, an asset." He goes, "But I don't want that. I want to be profitable." He says, "You are profitable. Think about it. Before you had nothing. Now you have an asset worth $1,000,000. You can turn that asset into cash. You could try and sell it, although not many people are interested in my silly story, but you could turn it into cash by turning it into a business venture." Little Khalani sits down and he thinks about this and he says, "Okay, I'm going to work out how to turn Granny's gym, which is a bit old, into a modern day gym that will make some money and that I can have cash coming in." He sits and thinks about it and he says, "Okay, I'll need a new machine over here. I'll need a van with some marketing on the sign. I'm going to call it Khalani's gym." And all of this, like in my picture, what a fantastic gym it's going to be. He says, "Great. But in order to do that," he sits and makes a list. "What will I need to happen? Here's my silly questions." He's got a couple of problems that I'm going to give to you now. These are some doubts he's got. He says, "Well, to make this work, I really could do with employing on a salary my friend Sarah. And Sarah's an excellent worker. I can get her on a contract. She's really strong. She can help move all the gym stuff and she'll be brilliant and encourage everyone to come to the gym. But Sarah is only going to give up her job if I can commit to giving her a €2,000 a month salary. Can I afford to do that?" He thinks, "At the moment, I don't have any cash at all. I've only got a gym. Can I afford to do that?" He also thinks, well, can I commit to buying a friend's van? Now, silly story here, but he's got a friend, and this friend, for whatever reason, stupid, is going away in a year from now, and he's got a van that is worth, in my stupid story, 20,000. It's a great van. But he says to Khalani, "I will give you the van, I will sell you the van before I go, but you have to sign an agreement now." I don't know why it's just my stupid story, but in a year from now, I will let you have the van for half price, 10,000, if you sign an agreement. But if you sign an agreement, you've got to give me 10,000. Khalani has to think, am I going to have 10,000 to buy the van? I really want the van, but have I got the money in a year from now? Thirdly, he needs to think, well, in all of this process, I don't actually have any cash. Do I need to take a bank loan to get some cash? I've got an asset, I'm profitable with the gym, but do I need a bank loan to get some cash straight away? And if so, how much? Now, you can think about that. How does he answer those questions? How does he know the answer to those things? Well, Khalani doesn't know. Maybe you can think of a way. But Khalani goes back to the accountant. For whatever reason, he's become good friends and a mentor, and the accountant is going to tell him how. He says, "What you need to do, Khalani, you can't answer those questions without doing a cash flow forecast. A cash flow forecast is an estimate, a forecast, like a weather forecast. It's not going to be exact. It's looking into the future. It's looking at the next year, an estimate of the future cash inflows and outflows of a business, usually done on a monthly basis. This then shows the expected cash balance at the end of each month. Khalani says, that's great, but I've got no clue what you're talking about. Help me out. Can you explain how to create one? The accountant says, absolutely. So we're going to show you now how to create the cash flow forecast. The accountant, it's January 2025. He said, look, I'll help you draw up a cash flow forecast, but I'm going to need some information and I need it to be as accurate as it can be, your best guess at these things. So Khalani has to sit down and think, and here come the questions. The first is, how much on January 2025, how much cash do you have in the gym bank account? So we can imagine that he's opened up a bank account for the gym. How much cash have you got in there? Literally money that you could take out at the cash machine. He sits and thinks, he goes, that's an easy one. 0. I've got absolutely nothing. Okay, the accountant makes a note of that. Next question, he says, what are your possible cash inflows each month? Khalani goes, what? I don't know what you mean. He said, well, think about it. In the gym, you're going to be spending money. We're going to call them outflows. It sucks, but you have to spend money. But you're also going to get money coming in, hopefully. That's a business. What are all the inflows coming in? He said, how are you going to make money? He said, okay, right, well, I'm going to have a membership fee. I'm going to charge people to be members to the gym. Accountant says, wonderful, that will be an inflow. But now I need you to tell me how much you're going to make from that each month. Khalani goes, how do I know? He goes, well, that's the problem with cash flow. It's going to have to be an estimate, but we need your best guess. It might not be perfect, but your best guess. Khalani goes, oh, I really don't know. Well, he sits and thinks and thinks and thinks, does some estimates, one does some market research, and he comes up with a number and he says, I'm going to have memberships, which are, I reckon I'm going to get, best guess, 2,000 every month from memberships. You can see on my screen already. He said, well, what other money is going to come in? He said, well, I could also possibly do personal classes. I could run them myself. And he said, again, you've got to give me then the accountant, how much will you make from that? And he said, well, I think I can make 2,000 every month from the personal classes. Great, the accountant logs it down. Now, the outflows, what are you going to have to spend cash on? What are you going to have to spend money on? Now, in reality, the gym would have lots of things to spend its money on, but in my silly story, we'll keep it fairly simple. And he says, okay, well, I want to buy, I looked at the old gym, Granny's gym, and I need a modern treadmill. But I'm going to buy that. I've seen one for 4,000, but I'm going to buy it in March. I don't need it straight away. So I'm going to have an outflow in March. I'm going to have to spend 4,000 euros on a treadmill. I also, every month, will have to pay the electricity. Electricity is a funny one when we talk about variable or fixed cost, but that's for another video. Have a look at that. But we're going to say it's a fixed cost because he's contacted the electricity company and he says he wants to pay a set rate, a fixed rate every month, irrespective of whether he's in or not. Not always done that way, but in my silly example, we'll make it fixed. So the electricity, I'm going to pay 500 a month every month, and also water, done in the same way, I'm going to pay 500 every month. Accountants writing this down. And then secondly, of course, fourthly, of course, there's Sarah's salary. I'm going to pay Sarah 2,000 every month. Again, there's other things you could say, well, what about your salary, Khalani? We'll keep it out of this little example. But they are the outflows. Okay, right. The accountant then says, that's wonderful. We're now going to turn this into the form of a cash flow forecast, and you're going to be doing some maths along with me. So here's the spreadsheet that's created the rough form that we're going to fill in. Now, I've also put a link to this down at the bottom of the video, and it's interactive. You can download it and you can play with this so you can fully understand what's going on. It's got equations set in it so that you can adapt and play along so we fully understand. But we're going to go back to the story of the accountant explaining to Khalani how to do it. So we need our information over here. Then there's three parts or four parts to a cash flow forecast. We've got the inflows that go up the top, all the money that's going to go into the business. We've got the outflows, all the money that goes out. Then we've got the net cash flow area and then the opening and closing balance. And this is predicting the year. So this January here is the January of 25, then February of 2025, going all the way to January of 2026. So it's going to predict all of this. Don't try and understand everything now. As we go through it, you're going to get to grips with what's going on. So just bit by bit, we'll do it. Okay, let's start adding some numbers and see what happened. Now, the first thing is we're going to add just this first inflow. We're going to put 2,000 in here, but I'm not going to press return yet, because when I press return, it will make changes to all of the spreadsheet. But let's try and predict what changes will happen. You can try this again as well. Think what will happen. So if we look at this section, the inflows, well, this yellow box says total cash inflow. Well, there is an equation, but it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Total means all of these things added together. If this is one of the inflows, this is another inflow, the total is going to be all of those things. So in mine, if I press return now, it's going to be 2,000 plus 0. There's another 0 there. That's going to take that to a 2,000 plus 0. It will be 2,000. Then we've got the outflow section. Well, I'm not putting any information in there. It's all 0, so that shouldn't change. Then we come to net cash flow. Now, that's an interesting one. We'll have a go first time, and then we'll keep coming back to it. You'll get used to it as we go more through and try more examples. But the net cash flow, think of it like a net with fish. If you had a net and 3 fish went into the net and 2 fish jumped out, what would be left in the net? Well, it would be the ones that jump in minus the ones that jump out. 3, 2 went out, there'd be 1 left in the net. Well, the same for this cash. If we've got 2,000 jumping into the net and 0 jumping out of the net, how much is left in the net? Well, that should go to 2,000 then. So the net cash flow, an equation, but it's inflows minus outflows. That should be 2,000 minus 0, that should go to 2,000. Now, this bit, I don't know why, but children always get confused about this. If you've got your own bank account, it should be the simplest thing. We're then going to say the the opening balance. This, forget what's going on in the table. We're now going to look at the actual bank account. If you went to the ATM, the cash machine, and looked at it and said, how much money do we have in the bank? This is on the 1st of January, the first minute of the 1st of January. The opening balance. Well, that's going to stay as 0 because we can see how much do you have on the 1st of January? Nothing. Okay, but if you have nothing in your bank on the 1st of January and through the month you get 2,000 coming in but nothing going out, how much would you end the last day of January with? Well, you get in that net, you keep 2,000. Well, that 2,000 would then stay, the net is essentially your bank account, stays in your bank account, and therefore you'd end the month with 2,000. Okay, so I reckon, you should be guessing, I reckon this is going to stay as 0, but the closing balance should be 2,000. Now think about that. Is there anything else that's going to change? The answer is yes, because if 2,000 is the closing bank at the last minute of January, nothing happens with that until the first minute of February. So if you close January with 2,000 in your bank, you're going to open February with 2,000. So I think this is going to have an opening balance in February of 2,000. If it not, someone's been robbing you and the bank's been taking your money. Where's it gone? Then, if we don't add anything else to this table, then we should have 2,000 opening in February. We're not going to have any money because I've not put anything in here. But if you open and no one spends any money in February, this should go to 2,000. If you have 2,000 to close February and nothing else changes, you should have 2,000 to March. So I think this whole thing should jump along. Here we go. Let's press return and see whether I've set this up correctly with the equations. Let's see. And there we go. We can see 2,000, total 2,000, no outflows, the net 2,000, and therefore 2,000. Try it yourself on your table. Now we've got to add in another inflow. So we said we've also got the personal classes. So we're going to put 2,000. This one should be a bit simpler. If I press return, what's going to happen? Well, I think you should be able to guess. Try it yourself. 2,000 now. It's plus 2,000 because of the total. 2,000. This is going to go to 4,000. The outflows won't change, but therefore we're going to have net cash flow is 4,000 and all these should change. Let's just check. There we go. Have a go at it yourself. We're then going to go to the outflows, the same premise. We're going to leave this March number to start with. We're going to go to the electricity and we're going to put 500. Okay, when I press 500, when I press return, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to have, the inflows aren't going to change, but we're going to have a total outflow now of 500. 500 plus all these zeros, it's going to change later, but that should go to 500. Now think about this net that captures. We're going to have 4,000 coming into the net, but we're going to have 500 coming out. That's going to leave us with 3,500. So that net cash flow should go to 3,500. That means we're going to adapt our closing balance. Sorry, he's not going to have a closing balance of 4,000. He's going to have 3,500, and that should run all the way along. And there we go. We now need to add Sarah's salary, so let's put 2,000 in there, and when we press return on 2,000, think about it, well, the inflows are not going to change, but we're going to have 2,000 plus 500 here. It's going to change the total cash outflow, because it's not just 500, we've got to plus that 2,000. That should go to 2,500. Then think of the net. If we've got 4,000 jumping in, 2,500 jumping out, what's that number going to change to? Let's have a look. And then it's going to change all the balance along. Now this is useful because we can see we're starting to predict if it was this simple, and of course no business is this simple, we could say, well, in January I'm going to have 1,500 a year from now in my bank, but this is ongoing, is where it gets complex, and we need this table. I'm going to quickly add in the other numbers. We're going to put 500 in. You should have a guess of what's going on there. And then we've got the van payment and the treadmill that's coming later on. Now, the reason Excels are excellent, and the reason we really use Excel, we never do it by hand, you have to do it in the exam, but in a real case, we do it with Excel, is because you don't have to do all the maths. You can just drag this along like I'm going to do. And this is going to put all of this information, taking it right through the year. We can extend it on for 10 years. Of course, the further into the future you go, the less accurate this is going to be, but we're now having it for a year. I can drag the bottom of this square, and it's going to take that 2,000, because we're saying they are fixed, they are the same every month. In reality, we know a lot of these things wouldn't be fixed, they would vary about how much they would get for memberships every month. I'm going to do the same, drag it along here, each of these things, because we know they're the same. Dragging them through, you can do it. Now this is looking pretty useful. Now suddenly we could say, well, if this is the case, and it's not, remember, because he's still got to buy his treadmill and potentially the van, now we've got some really useful information, because we're seeing, well, how much is he making in net cash flow per month? We can see in this situation, well, actually, he's making a net cash flow. He has, on average, in a prediction, 4,000 flowing in and 3,000 flowing out. That's making 1,000 each month. Therefore, by January of 2026, he should have a closing balance, a cash balance of 13,000, which is what Khalani has been looking for. Remember, he was like, I've got an asset, but I want cash. Well, he should have 13,000 in cash in his bank. Okay, but we've still got to add on those other variables. Remember, he wanted a treadmill. So we're going to put that treadmill in March, first of all. But let's see if that creates any problems. 4,000. Okay, we've got a problem, first of all. Can you see what it is? Have a little look at it. Well, when you add the 4,000, first of all, we've got March now. We're not going to have a net positive cash flow because March, 4,000 comes in, but 7,000 comes out. That's going to be minus 3,000. He overspends by 3,000. In the real cash flow forecast, really important, we put that with brackets. Excel doesn't put the brackets, it puts it as a minus. But you must, really important rule, put brackets. That signifies. The minus can be missed when you handwrite, a little small thing. We want to make it really clear because it's super important. On your own personal thing, you might want to turn it red and go, whoa, that's a problem. I'm minus there. Now, that not making a positive net cash flow maybe isn't such a problem, but there is a problem when it comes to a bank account, because if we have a look here, his opening balance was 2,000, but he closes with minus 1,000. Now his bank manager is not going to be happy with that. It's not going to be allowed to happen unless he's got something called an overdraft. Again, that's for another video. But that means something's going to have as a problem. He's going to have a liquidity problem. He's not going to have the ability to pay his short-term debts in March. Therefore, we can't get that minus 1,000 unless it's an overdraft. He's not going to be able to pay Sarah or his electricity, and that's going to get him in all sorts of problems, a liquidity crisis. So the good thing is of doing a cash flow forecast, though, he's knowing about this back in January. So he's sitting down with the accountant and he goes, well, hang on a minute, I can see I'm going to have a problem in January there, and I need to prepare for it now. Okay, he's flagged that, but we remember we've got another thing going on, that he wants to buy this van in January of 2026 for a cost of 10,000. So he goes over here, we're going to put the van of 10,000, I'm going to put the 10,000 in here, and how can he get on? Press return. Uh-oh, yes, he's got this problem again. We know that in January he's going to have a negative net cash flow, 4,000 coming in, but 13,000 coming out, making it minus 9,000. But again, it's going to take him down to that minus 1,000. So let's take this information, let's go back to the questions that we asked and see what are the answers to them. The first question we had is, can he employ his friend on a 2,000 a month salary? Well, using the estimate, and remember it's an estimate, it's not perfect, these are all guesses, it seems yes he can, because he's going to have a regular monthly income of 4,000 and the cash outflow, including Sarah's salary, would be 3,000. So yes, it seems that he can confidently pay Sarah. Can he commit to buying his friend's van? Well, no, not currently, because it would leave him in these negative numbers that we see over here. But they're not so far out. So this third question is the important one. Should he borrow money from a bank? Well, bank loans, they charge interest. So you don't want to get more than you need. You want to get the right amount. And this table is going to be really useful to know exactly how much he needs to borrow. Now, the bank loan is not the only solution. We're going to do another video on how we can use this cash flow for the other sources of finance, deferring payment, overdrafts that we mentioned. That's for another video. But let's just say the bank loan one. Well, we're going to put this as another inflow in January. How much money do you think he should put? Well, the great thing of a cash flow forecast like this, you can just play around. Let's see if he puts 1,000, he asks the bank for 1,000, which isn't very much for a bank loan, that would be high interest. But let's put it in, 1,000. Does that solve his money situation? Well, yes, we don't now have any negative closing balances. This goes down to 0, but no negative numbers. However, you then think, would I be comfortable with that? These are only predictions, they're not accurate. I don't think that gives me much of a comfort blanket, because in March, I'm going to be running a business that at the end of March, at the start of April, is literally not going to have any cash to spend on any emergencies. Cash is important. We need it when the drinks machine breaks and I have to pay the person to repair that. At that point, I'd say, I can't repair it, and the customers would be unhappy. So 1,000 doesn't sound sensible. Why not give yourself a bit of a cushion? It's a bit of a pain, but I'm going to borrow 5,000. Okay, we can borrow 5,000, we press that, but let's not forget, that's now great, we're staying in positive cash, but when you borrow money for a bank, it's not free, you're going to have monthly repayments. So we're going to add those monthly repayments to the outflows now. They're going to be regular. Now, it depends on the interest, it depends on how long you take it, but you can drag it out. But let's just say he's borrowed the 5,000 and he's got to pay, the bank has said, 100 over how many months? I haven't done the maths, but let's say it's 100. He wouldn't pay it back in January, he'd take the money, but we're going to have to put 100 for however many months it would last. Will this create problems? Let's put 100 in there. I'm going to drag this over. And there we go. We can see that that doesn't create too many problems. I don't know how many months we'd have to drag. From this, we're now in a superb position. It's an estimate, I've stressed that he could say, well, I don't have any cash, but I am profitable. I've got this asset, thanks to grandma. And I know that a year from now, I'm going to have a business which is going to have a van, and it's going to end January with 2,800 in cash in the bank. That's all it for cash flow forecast. Play around. I really believe it's not just about remembering equations, it's playing with it, understanding it, using it. We're going to do another video later on all the different sources of finance and how it affects it. That's it. Hope it helps. Don't forget to like and follow. Any questions, write them in the comments.